Democratic vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris opened last night's debate with harsh words for the Trump administration. She says the pandemic response has been a failure and criticized President Trump for hiding crucial information about COVID-19.
The American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. Here's the thing. On January 28th, the vice president and the president were informed about the nature of this pandemic. They were informed that it's lethal in consequence, that it is airborne, that it will affect young people, and that it would be contracted because it is airborne. And they knew what was happening, and they didn't tell you.
Todd Graham joins me now. He's the director of debate at Southern Illinois University and has been named the National Debate Coach of the Year 3 times. Todd, good morning and great to see you again.
Good morning.
What were the biggest moments, say 2 or 3, from last night's debate?
I mean, there were several like above average moments, I suppose. There weren't any like standout moments where you're just like, wow, I'll remember that forever. But I think the moments were just getting to know Kamala Harris. Most people still don't watch Democratic primary debates. So it's that first impression. And I thought she made just almost a perfect first impression, both in how she presented herself, how she gave her arguments, and then in the quality of answers, just answering the question directly. I really thought that was her best debate. And I've watched all of her previous debates better than any of her Democratic primary debates. So that would be my #1 takeaway.
Some observers thought she didn't go far enough and there were some missed opportunities.
As far as like, stopping Mike Pence or doing other things, maybe. I think there were some people that thought she should have been more bold to him when he was interrupting her, but I beg to differ. I thought she was just the right amount because you work in television news, so you probably know this, but most studies indicate that there is a difference between how women and men are perceived when they're public speaking. And in debate, it's most certainly true. Had she been more bold, people would have said, oh, she's just too aggressive, and then used Trump's lines like she's a mean woman or, and so that's what Trump tries to set her up as before the debate, knowing if she stood up for herself just a little bit too much, that stereotype that's incorrect, but it's a stereotype, might come into play. So I thought she handled it pretty darn well.
Mike Pence was smooth and going in, that's what a lot of people were expecting from him. He is masterful at evading a question. We saw that on display last night for 90 minutes, and he went over his time. The thank yous were not working from Susan Page, but how do you think Mike Pence did in defending President Trump and, again, avoiding some of those really key and important questions from Susan Page?
Yeah, I mean, he was avoiding questions just so often that it was bothering me. It was 30 minutes in, I looked at my watch, and I realized he hadn't answered the direct question she had asked him yet, 30 minutes into the debate. By the end of the debate, he got better, but if you recall, he was actually one question behind. So one of his strengths, frankly, is the pro-life movement, and he didn't answer that question until the next topic came up because he was one topic behind, never answering the question. So, no, I thought that was poor, but worse than that was just the fact that he was not being honest. And as I say, if you package a lie in a nicer presentation, the stolen goods are still just as stolen. He needs to be more honest with the American people.
If you watched it with the volume turned down, what you would really notice were Kamala Harris's facial expressions. She was giving the side eye to Vice President Trump. She looked dismayed at times. She shook her head. She used her hands a lot. What did you make of her body language?
Well, the first thing I can tell you is nobody does watch it with the volume off. And Donald Trump's actually an expert at this. He used to give interviews where afterwards he'd go ask to look at them, and he would turn the volume off just to see what he looked like. So but that is important, but it also goes with what you're saying at the time. I loved her facial expressions. I thought they were complex. She showed anger at the right moments, frustration at the right moments, and she smiled a lot and looked at the camera. So I actually wrote about how much I liked her nonverbal communication.
So I want to play some sound for you and for our audience, just in case they missed it, and also to punctuate a point. This is when she was trying to tell the vice president in a polite way to let her speak. Here's that sound.
Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000 a year.
He said he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well, wait.
I'm speaking.
Was that effective, Todd?
It was at first. Here's the problem is she used that then later and more every time he interrupted. And something nobody thinks to practice is, well, I'll have a line ready for when he interrupts me. But what they don't realize in these debates are they're actually going to get interrupted 10, 12, 20 times. So in my notes, I've actually written 10 to 20 different things to say when you get interrupted, because using the same one over and over becomes less effective against Mike Pence.
Okay, final question for you since we're dissecting the evening. What did you make of the moderator? Twitter didn't like her.
Oh, well, here's the funny thing. I've been awake the whole time writing my article for CNN.com. It's posted. Please go read it. I don't know what Twitter said, but they got this one right. The moderator was terrible. I graded her as an F because even though these two candidates were less volatile, still the moderator has to do simple things like make sure they answer the question, make sure that if they're lying, that you ask follow-ups like, can you prove that? What's your example of that? She didn't control the debate, and then she let Mike Pence sort of talk over Kamala Harris all the time. And no, I thought she was awful.
Todd Graham, I really love talking to you. Thank you so much. Todd is the director of debate at Southern Illinois University.